Okay, what's up YouTube? So today I'm bringing you the review of Glare. It's an indie platformer that released yesterday on Steam. So in this game you play as a sun god, and your main power, as you guessed it, is the glare. You basically stare at stuff and make sunbeams come out of your eyes, and then it like pushes stuff around or activates objects or blows away purple mist. I don't know, the game doesn't make too much sense. There's not too much context to anything. You're really just this little guy whose head looks like kind of a sunny fireball, and you run around and shoot purple things, which are your enemies, and you have to get around obstacles and stuff. The game is mostly a straight-up platformer. There's action to it. And there's, I guess, somewhat of like a shooting component to it. You get like a gun, like Metroid style, kinda, where the gun gets like upgraded. You also get other powers upgraded throughout the game. You get like double jump. You get a power to slide. So it's got that kind of Metroid-y aspect to it. But at the same time, it focuses a lot more on the platforming than on the combat, which I guess is okay, because this is really marketing itself as a platformer. Anyway, so I guess the first thing you notice about the game are the pretty nice graphics for an indie game. It looks like the developers spent a lot of time putting detail into the world and crafting their various assets throughout. The game looks good for the most part. The enemy models are all mostly similar, but what's there does have some pretty cool detail if you ever get the chance to look at them. The enemies look kind of cool, but at least they are very detailed, and you can see that the developers obviously cared. They cared a lot about their game. It shows in the very detailed art and the amount of work they put into that. Now, at the same time, I would have liked to see a lot more variation in the world and the enemies. The game does look good. The artist obviously knew what they were doing, and they are talented. And they really could have used some more, enemy variety to showcase that, and some more variety in the stages to showcase that. There's really not that much variety at all in the game in terms of level design and stuff like that. The climate might change, the scenery might change a bit, but there's not. What's there is pretty much just, kind of retextured assets. Like the rock. You'll have like one area's rock, then the next area might be like ice, and it's really just like white rock. There's like vines in one area that are green, and then the next area might be ice, and they're just like frozen vines. It does get repetitive. Now, normally, yeah, a game might get repetitive after, many hours of play. That's expected in most video games. Problem is, this game is pretty short to begin with. It is a short game. It could probably be beaten in a sitting or two, and for it to get repetitive that quickly, that's not too good. The stages do kind of feel similar. And the enemies are kind of similar, and it does kind of feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again, just more complex. Even the boss is the same on like every level. You're fighting like the same boss, just a variation of it with, it has some new moves, but it's really the same boss over and over again every level. And once you get kind of the pattern down of fighting it, it's really not that hard. So what I liked about the game is there's a lot of really cool platforming aspects, and lots of really well done mechanics for the most part. I really liked the sliding it kind of gave it like a Sonic the Hedgehog feel at some points, and I think the game's best moments by far were the sliding segments, where you get this power to slide. I think it was the second stage of the game, and you slide around and you start like kind of moving really fast down slopes, and then like there's all these puzzles, like jumping puzzle kind of things, where you have to like figure out, you have to jump on a slope, and that'll like kind of ramp you down to an area, and then you'll be going fast enough to jump over a big hole, and then that'll kind of like maybe lead you to another ramp that actually shoots you back to where you just were, but to like a higher spot or something. It's kind of hard to describe, but you'll see in the video. So that stuff was kind of cool, and I did like the controls were very tight for the most part. Just the platforming segments in general were pretty well thought out. I did feel challenged at some points, and it never became frustrating. I was never sitting there like, oh, I don't want to do this again. I think everything was, once you figured out what you had to do, it was usually pretty easy to get there. But it was sometimes figuring out, how do I make it across this giant obstacle? And you'd be using a combination of jumps and you have kind of a sunbeam hook shot thing. There's also even like a kind of a vehicle type thing at some parts where you jump into this like orb and you tell it where to shoot you. So the developers did a good job mixing that kind of stuff up and really changing it up. So at least in terms of the platforming, I did feel that each level was kind of adding a new aspect of the platforming to it and expanding on the platforming. So as a platformer, I think this does okay. I think it's really short, and the game I believe right now is $13.99 on Steam or something like that. The game's only a few hours long, so for that kind of price, I would expect something maybe a little longer. And the other major complaint I have is the technical issues. Now, I don't know if anyone else is having these issues. I posted in the Steam forums about it. No one's gotten back to me yet. If they do, and I find out this was something on my end, I'll update here. Or if I find a fix to it, I'll update. But basically, I'm finding not when I shoot enemies necessarily, but when I reflect enemy projectiles back at them and damage them, which you can do with your glare. That's one of your moves. Whenever it contacts them, or if I like push enemies using the glare into spikes or something, the game stutters and freezes for a second when I hit them. And if I hit like a lot of enemies at once, there's some parts where like hordes of enemies are coming at you and you're just kind of reflecting projectiles back at them or pushing a whole bunch into a wall or something, then it'll really start to like stutter up every single time I hit them into something. Every time there's like a collision, the thing stutters. Now I know this isn't my PC specs. I'll post my specs in the description. Anyone familiar with any of my other videos would already know my PC's a pretty strong gaming rig, and it should more than handle this. I have a feeling this is something else. I don't know if it's driver related or if it's just the game itself. I also find I get a stutter on every time I hit a little save point, it'll stutter. And while in the beginning it was more of just a nuisance, later on when you're fighting more enemies and stuff, it really became a problem. So I don't know, again, if I can attribute that to the game itself or if that's something else, like a driver issue or something, but I'll update here if I find out more about that. So overall, would I recommend this game? I would say if you really love platformers and you don't care about story at all, then you might find some fun in this. I don't know if I can justify the $13 price, but if that's not an issue to you, I think this, platforming wise, I think this does a decent job. It's gonna probably be for most people an afternoon of fun, and then it's over because you're gonna beat it pretty quickly if you're even slightly decent at platforming. I also recommend you play this with a controller too, because I've did find the controls were much tighter using the controller, especially the glare is controlled by the right analog stick, so that was very intuitive. So if you're like really a huge platformer fan, you might like this. If you like more action in your games, Trine comes to mind. I'm sure a lot of people saw this and thought of Trine. Trine had a lot more action in it than this game, I think. And it was, if I remember correctly, when I played it, it was longer, a lot longer than this. So I think if you're comparing this to something like Trine, I think Trine maybe was better on the action end, and with the they had the addition of some real puzzles in there, where this game, the only sort of puzzle in this game is like, how do you jump across a giant obstacle course, trying to figure out the right combination of moves to make it from one end of the stage to the other, and sometimes you have to stop and think like, wait, how am I going to do this? But other than that, there's no real like set puzzles that are like explicitly there. So yeah, that's my review. I found the game pretty entertaining. I was disappointed with the length of the game, and I was disappointed with the technical issues. I was kind of also hoping for more action. One other thing, I thought for all the detail put into the scenery, I feel the levels themselves felt kind of barren. There are, you're supposed to be on these worlds that you're trying to like save from this corruption stuff, and there's not much going on though in the worlds. It's like, what are you saving? Like a bunch of rocks and mushrooms. Like, there's not really much going on. There's no like life forms running around. There's a couple segments of the game where you might see something like there. I remember seeing like sometimes like an animal, like kind of like an alien animal thing in the background, or there's one part where you can like, you actually have to figure out how to use like an alien life form to get somewhere. But for the most part, it does feel like these worlds are just empty and barren and have been dead for a while or something. And it's a shame, because they obviously had pretty good artists making this game. The graphics look good, and besides the stuttering, it ran smoothly, and I really would have loved to see them throw in life forms running around and just make the world feel alive. Make it feel like you're actually trying to save something, because that was supposed to be the story of the game, was you're trying to save these worlds. But it's like, what are you really saving them from? There's nothing here. Alright, so that's my review. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I will definitely try an update here if anyone gets back to me in the Steam forums about those issues. So I'll see you next time.